So, who's still hungover from Memorial Day? And how's it going, everybody? I'm Kyle Curtis. This is NonSequitur. Joined by Steve McGray, and producing always is David Fulton. David, everything good today? Easy? No noise, so that's a good thing. That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Did we kill him? Is it that bad, David? Make sure he's alive.
I guess. A special guest this evening. I'm going to try to pronounce this correctly, but he 30 years spent as an ancient numismatist. Numismatist. Whew. Okay, now to the next word. Rick Yifrach. Please tell me I got that right.
Perfect.
2 for 1. Oh, Steve, this is going to be something drastic is going to happen because we started on time, no technical issues, and Kyle pronounced his words correctly. This is
who are you?
This
what
is
have you
an
done,
omen.
Kyle?
I know.
I'm
I
impressed.
know. So we're gonna get to Rick here in just a second, and why he is here, and why you see all of this bling and coinage around him. But first, let's go into what we've got for the rest of the week. Now, tomorrow at 8 o'clock, in just a second, you should be seeing None at your door. Perfect. Okay. So we had a stream probably 2 weeks ago with Telltale Atheist and Lloyd Evans, and it was about their deconversion story from the Jehovah's Witness faith. And we stated that it's really hard to get a Jehovah's Witness to come on and talk about things that's with them active. And we actually found one, and he will be with us tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And we will be joined by Telltale and Lloyd Evans again. So make sure that you do not miss that. And then on Thursday, Secrets of the Pharaohs with Maggie Bryson. That's at 8 o'clock. Also, she will be back with us probably a month ago, and we went through kind of the general Giza plateau. We're going to kind of dive in a little bit deeper and go into some of the pharaohs, which is her. So that's going to be really interesting. Don't miss that. And then this weekend, I'm getting ahead of myself. How could I forget this one? So I was approached a week ago about having a debate on whether or not we should spank our children. And that's going to play out. That says Thursday. That's actually my mistake. It's going to be Friday at 8 o'clock, not Thursday. Thursday is the Egyptologist. So my mistake, but right. So spank your kids on Friday. And now talk about Saturday and Sunday. This kind of came out of nowhere following us booking Greater Sapien. But this weekend we are having our first Flat Earth weekend. And we'll here we go. Yeah. Okay, so here's how this is going to go. Saturday at 8 o'clock, we have Greater Sapien, and from, I'm going to say about 90% certain, a very special guest to state the counter, to take the Flat Earth position. I mean, it is yet until it's 100% confirmed, but you will definitely recognize the name. And everybody knows Greater Sapien. He was probably the most requested guest that we've had come through here. So you will be getting that on Saturday and Sunday at 4 by the name of Beyond the Imaginary Curve, Gab and Dale. They actually kind of do a play-by-play of our discussion with allegedly Dave, the Flat Earth
Kyle,
urine advocate. Yep.
Your mic is extremely choppy. Nobody can hear you right now. Can you just do a quick exit and come? Nobody can hear what you're saying at this point.
Okay. Let's do this.
If you exit and come back in, it'll reset that.
Any better?
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Let me know if there is an issue with the audio. I refreshed, so hopefully that took care of that. But I'll back up and kind of go over this again real quickly. Saturday at 8 o'clock, we have Greater Sapien coming. We all have potentially a very special guest to Flat Earth position. I'm not going to say who that is yet until they're 100% confirmed. But if that goes through, he's definitely a name that you're all going to recognize. So hope that works out. That'll be at 8 o'clock on Saturday. On Sunday, we will be joined by Gav and Dale. Now, Gav and Dale are from Beyond the Imaginary Curve, which is a rather large flat Earth channel on YouTube. And they went through a play-by-play of our discussion, allegedly Dave, the urine advocate, the sovereign citizen, and the flat earther. And there are interesting things to say, and we're going to kind of hit back on that, I guess, on Sunday. So that will be Sunday for Eastern. So join us for that weekend. Prizes, people you know, people you don't know. It'll be a good time. That's what we've got coming up. Now, hopefully the audio situation is fixed. Can everybody hear?
Steve is muted. Steve.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's still dropping out every other word. I think that's something on your internet connection because they seem to be able to hear me fine, and they can hear David fine. So I'm not quite sure.
I can hear you guys all.
But
Let's try one more thing. Steve, if you want to, Steve, pick up about this weekend while I fix this.
Sure. Let me just go to the schedule real quick so I can kind of give you guys a rundown of what's going to be going on this weekend. And once again, I do want to make sure that people are safe and sound this holiday. I've had actually friends pass away on Memorial Day weekend because of accidents and drunk driving. So please don't drink and drive. Okay, so tomorrow we do have all on the Watchtower with Telltale and Lloyd Evans. Ask Jehovah's Witness question. On Thursday we'll be having Shadow of the Pharaoh, Egyptologist Dr. Maggie Bryson. Love her, by the way. She's really entertaining, and even though I know very little about Egyptology and Assyriology and all this other stuff we've kind of been diving into, I got to tell you, it's really a fun topic to kind of learn about. And then on Friday, we have Spanking Children. Is it okay? That's going to be the discussion. And then Saturday, yes, you've all been asking me and Kyle for Greater Sapien, and guess who we got? Guess what? Greater Sapien. We also are going to be working on Saturday to get Russell Glasser from the Ides Experience. He is available on the 2nd, which is Saturday, but we're just trying to figure out a time that works in with the Greater Sapien show. So if we can get both on that day, that'd be a double header on Saturday, which would be really nice. Oh yeah, and after this particular stream tonight, we're going to try again to do the Is Doubt a Virtue with Ozymandias Ramses II tonight. So stay tuned. This is a double header tonight as well.
Okay, now let's see if that's any better. Switch some stuff around.
So,
hopefully
actually.
they can hear. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think so. Let's go with that for a while.
I apologize that you didn't get to hear my lovely voice telling you what was coming up. I know it was hard to sit through having Steve read it out, but some things we just have to.
As well, it's okay.
We have to go through. So
I have hair. That's all that matters.
You do have hair. That is for sure. Lovely hair. So
because
we
Kyle,
have
wait 1 second. I got to tell you, Kyle gave me the best hair advice ever. Condition twice, leave on longer.
Oh.
It works. Thank you, Kyle.
You're very welcome. Hair is important, Steve. Hair is important.
For you, it is. Yes.
We won't go into that right now. But so we are actually, believe it or not, we do have a very special guest with us. I'm sorry, Rick, that it took us so long to get to you. We're still ironing some kinks out with a new program that we're using. But here we are. I kind of called it, actually, Steve. Did I not say that we went off too smoothly in the beginning and something was going to happen? So okay, Rick Yifrach is an ancient numismatist of 30 years. Yeah, I'll take it. Of 30 years. And he's going to walk through some really interesting stories behind some of history's. Actually, I like the way that you worded this, Rick, and I'm paraphrasing, but you said that coins were sort of history's original memes, if you will. And I think that's relatable. Yeah, that's a good line. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and kind of tell us how you got into this and what it is exactly, and then we'll just jump straight into what you've got for us tonight.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let me just start off first by saying that I'm really honored to be on the show. I really, I'm a big fan. That's how I discovered you guys a few months ago. Kind of going down the flat Earth rabbit hole. I'm not a flat earther, but the shows that you had were they were the best out there. And I fell in love with Kyle, with Steve, the dynamics between you two. Second to none. And I said, this is going to be a big show. And
we hate each other.
Will you marry me? Will you marry me?
Steve and I hate each other.
Don't go that way, but I'll marry you.
I'm the straight one here, remember?
Right. That I know. I know a lot about you guys. And I know Steve, one thing about you is that if I could go back in time and have an ancient coin made with your bust on it, I think it would be one of the most memorable ones of all time. You have an ancient coin face like nobody else.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to explain. That's the coolest compliment I've ever had.
That is pretty cool.
Honored. Thank you.
It's long hair, the beard. You have the second century Roman time, 2nd century AD, late second century. It was sort of the philosopher emperors, and they grew out their hair and their beard, and certain faces just are coinogenic, not photogenic, but coinogenic.
Rick, I'm going to have to hear about this for like 2 weeks now. Thank you, Rick. I'm going to have to hear about this for 2 weeks now.
I'm not named like Kyle, but I appreciate
Listen,
it.
I love both of you guys. And I was going to also say, and I said this in the pre-show, is that I was trying to get a shirt with picture of a triangle, colors in it, and Steve's face that said, "These things do not exist." But I didn't have time to make it. So I wore this shirt that you see instead. And whoever can tell me, the first person in the chat that can say who this is, will get a free ancient coin that I'll ship.
I know who it is.
Who is it?
Do you
I know
really?
who it is. Yeah. Can I take a guess?
Do you want to take the guess, or should we let the audience take it?
I let the
Yeah, the audience can take it, but I'm going to write it down.
I'm honest, Kyle. Message me what you think it is, and then I will say whether you were right or wrong after the audience.
I'm going to write it down right now.
Okay.
I'd be really impressed.
It's like the match game. It's like match game 75. Ding.
Right. I wanted to do something to like offer the the people that are listening in some kind of so I couldn't think of anything because I couldn't get my Steve shirt on, and so I wore this. It's my buddy's band, Macabre. They're pretty big here in Chicago, all over the world. But yeah, if I could go really quickly into how I got started in all this, I was 12 years old and I had moved to Israel. We had gone to Jerusalem, me and my father. I started collecting more modern coins, relatively speaking. And one day, my dad had brought home a book about coins, and it was on ancient coins, which was really, really cool to me. I didn't know that anything like that existed. And when I looked through it, I fell in love, and I told my dad, one day I will own one of these things. And I thought that they were just inaccessible, that, you had to be a millionaire to get them. I'd gone to visit my grandmother on a farm in a place called Ben Shemen, near Tel Aviv. And I would always ask people if they have coins. One day my uncle, I asked him, and he says, I have a coin. Can't give it to you, but I can bring it and show it to you. It's something very special. I didn't think anything of it, but the next day he brought it over, and it was a small square box. It was clear, had like some white cotton in it, and it was closed, but you could see through it. And I knew as soon as he handed it to me that was an ancient Roman coin, and I about lost my mind. I thought, again, he didn't give it to me. I held on to it. while I was visiting at my grandparents, and I didn't let it go. I mean, I went to sleep with it at night in my hand, carried it around with me all day. I even took showers with it. It's that crazy. I would not let it out of my sight. And in the end, I think he felt obligated to give it to me, and it's something that he had
You're
found
committed.
in the area. What's that?
You were committed.
I was committed, and thankfully he gave it to me because it changed my life. From then on, I was in love, and I thought, here's the thing: I'm new in this country in Israel, even though I was born there, but went back there when I was 12, and I thought I'm going to start the school year. This was in the summertime. I'm going to bring this to school, and I'm going to be the most popular kid in that school. Everybody's going to know my name. I was pretty damn disappointed when that thing came and I brought it, and most people just didn't give a shit. And that's usually how it is.
How rare that coin would be? I mean, on a rarity scale, if you had to say, this was a rare coin, where would it kind of fall? And I'm not talking about the degrading levels, obviously, but we can get into those things.
Sure.
But would you say that was a very rare coin, to say the least, or just rare?
It was, I'll give you the technical term for it. It was an Antoninianus of Saloninus. And he was briefly an emperor, the son of Valerian I. And it took me about a year with getting a few ancient coin books to go one by one, because there are tens of thousands of ancient coins. And it took me every day searching for it till I found what it is. Not that rare, not that special, but it didn't matter, and I still have it. And to me, it means everything, because that was my first, but that opened the doors to everything. And over the time, over the years, with the advent of the internet and eBay even, and just websites, they've become so much more accessible. And it's something that everybody from every background, every can afford. If you want to buy an ancient, a 2,000-year-old coin for $20, you can do that. If you want to pay $2 million, you can do that. So it really runs the gamut of price ranges, which is wonderful. Everybody can collect it, and that's what I want to tell everyone today, is that if you're interested in it, you can do it. We're trying to get more people collecting.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's
yeah,
dive in. But before we do, Steve, has anybody guessed who the mystery guy on the shirt is?
I don't know if they were trying. There's nothing in the live chat. Oh wait, I have one. Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine's lead singer for
Megadeth. That's hilarious.
Megadeth. Yeah.
Megadeth.
That's not Dave Mustaine.
Albert Fish.
No. You got
Albert
it,
Fish.
How did you know?
I have a kind of macabre interest in like Jack the Ripper and that kind of lore. And actually, Albert Fish, I watched a documentary on him probably 2 years ago. He is the guy that took a little boy and a little girl, killed them both, roasted them in the oven, and ate them.
Yeah.
Figures to be a serial killer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 1920s.
Yeah, the name does sound familiar to me, but I would never recognize that.
How do you get the coin?
Yeah.
But
So
I definitely know it wasn't Dave Mustaine.
So we're gonna move Rick between Steve and I, and throw some coins up on the screen, and then let Rick take us through them. I actually printed off these two so that I can see them as well. So there we go.
Right on.
And the floor is yours, sir.
I figured that what we'll do is start with the beginning of ancient coins, where money started from. Think of it like this. We came out of the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age collapsed. There was an apocalypse in the 1177 BC, where almost every empire was completely crushed, and only Egypt existed. Languages were lost. Writing was lost. So many cultures were gone. And it was a sort of a rebuild time. There was no money before that. And it took a few hundred years for the world to reestablish itself. Now, Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey, especially off the coast, was inhabited by Greeks. You've heard of a lot of famous Greek scientists and philosophers coming out of there. They place in Lydia. That's where what you're looking at comes from. It looks very simple, but this is the first coin. It's made out of electrum, which is a combination of gold and silver. And this was the first money that was traded. It had striations, as you can see on the left side. And on the right side, it has 2 punch marks. And this is the first time that people said the government is backing this to say it is not only is the metal good, but the weight is good, and it is official, and you can trade with this. And this was 650 BC. It took a while, but this set off a spark, a real spark in human thinking, of finances, of everything. And it lit up through the Greek world. It was the Greeks who really, I give them a lot of credit because, you know, without a Renaissance, there would have not been a Renaissance. And they were the ones that took it to the next level. And we're going to see that as we go through. So if anybody wondered what the first money looked like and where it's from, Lydia, 650 BC, this is simple. And it didn't take long for them to become really, really amazing in a short time, which you will see soon.
How much is something like that worth now, Rick?
A piece like this, and they are somewhat rare. They're not aesthetically that pleasing, but for the people that would want something like this, and look, there is many different weights that this coin comes in. I think this is like an 8-gram piece. And if you were to get an 8-gram piece, you're probably looking at about 4,000 to 5,000. They came, since this was the only metal they had around, which is before silver coins were struck and way before bronze coins were struck, they had to make fractional, tiny, tiny little coins that, I mean, I doubt you'll be able to see this, but no, you won't be able to see that. They made them so small that eventually they needed another method. But these are expensive only because they are so early. There aren't that many of them. And, well, yeah, that's pretty much right.
Sweet. Okay.
We can go on to the next one.
Just out of real quick, how do they stamp these? I mean, is there like some kind of like stamp on a guard to stamp it to show that's legitimacy, some type of currency?
It's one of my favorite questions to answer.
Yay! I asked a good question on a topic I know nothing about. This is awesome.
You two should get a room.
I just love everybody.
Let's do it. I'm in. We think we know. But doing what I do and having handled tens of thousands of coins, I don't think we know exactly how it was done. So I'll give you a quick sort of image in your head. There's an anvil, and there are 2 dies, one that would strike the reverse, the back of the coin, and one that would strike the obverse, the heads or the front of the coin. The obverse one would go into the anvil flush. Then you would have the reverse one on top of it and a blank piece of metal that would go in between my fists, if you can see. And that was supposedly struck with a hammer. And that would produce the coin. Reason I say that I don't think this could have worked for many coins is because eventually you got to very big bronze coins with enormous detail. Like if you look at this piece even, the tortoise is half the relief of the coin. It really comes out.
Yeah.
And just hitting it with a hammer, I don't think would do that. So, I mean, I've postulated and hypothesized that it was done with a press instead. But I'm still trying to sell that idea because you know how dogmatic things get with these things. And it's the same way with
a double-sided press that struck it at the same time or 2 different times?
No, it struck it at the same time. So it would.
Okay.
I thought I drew out a little diagram of one, but I might have not brought it. But yeah, you need torque, you know. So you think of like a long handle, you put the blank inside the die, and you come down with a lot of pressure. I think that makes a lot more sense. Here. So this is. I'm not very good at drawing. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, I see.
A little bit, yeah.
And this is what I think. Point go in there, and this would press it.
Gotcha.
How many people, like how many coins could one person effectively kind of pump out doing it this way?
Sure. So it depended on what they had. By the time the Romans got to it, they really perfected it. But we estimate that depending on the metal and depending on how many times they had to refresh or re-engrave the die, that you can get about 10,000 coins out of a die. And one person is said to probably be able to do, depending again on the metal and everything like that, 5 to 10,000. But you had a whole workforce of people doing it. The die engraver was probably the most important, and then you had people that cut the dies, that the blanks, and then you had the people that put them into the heated them up and put them in between the anvil and the die, and you had a person to hammer it. So it was a process that involved many people. They say likely slaves were the one that did it. Greeks and Romans really liked to use slaves for their labor, and to get an exact number is difficult. It varied depending on the coin, but a lot.
Can I get ahead of myself and ask? But let me get ahead of myself and ask this question: could this be the coin making? Could it have anything to do with Caesar's famous "the die is cast" line?
That came 620 years after Caesar had said that. So I don't think so. By that time, coin production was already perfected. But that's a good observation.
Let me ask you a follow-up, because I am kind of curious. Why did they decide to add these reliefs or indentations to increase the overall value of the coin rather than the intrinsic value of if it would be silver or gold? What made them think that by doing this, it would somehow change that?
Sure. I mean, no, it was. I mean, it was the metal that was worth the money. So, I mean, it was literally worth its weight in gold, and you were guaranteed, an exact quantity of gold or of silver, later on of bronze. It wasn't like fiat currency didn't come till the Roman times, but the Greeks. You're looking at a coin now. It's called a stater. It weighs about 9-10 grams, if I remember correctly, and it's worth its weight in silver.
Okay, so none of this was fiat, like you said. This was intrinsic value of the material.
Absolutely,
gotcha.
Absolutely. And this is really quick. I brought this up second because this is a tiny little island south of Athens called Aegina. Some people call it Aegina. Some people call it Aegina, but that sounds a little too much like vagina, so I don't call it that. But they, if you see on the right-hand side, there's an incus. It's a punch. And the first coins were all done that way because they thought that most likely you had to punch the coin from one side to get the relief to come out on the other side. And you have this tortoise. And this was struck in, 454 BC, I believe, 456, 454. But this island of Aegina had struck coins for longer than that. Before this, they had sea turtles on their coins, but they hated the Athenians, and the Athenians hated them. And Athens eventually absolutely just demolished this island and took over and inhabited it and put the land turtle instead of what they had was a sea turtle on the coins. And we're looking at a later incarnation, but they're really beautiful when you see them in hand. I mean, it's just an impressive piece, something that I've owned and unfortunately sold, but a really cool piece. We can go on to the next one. Let's see, I have questions.
You can tell based on the questions that we already have that there's going to have to be a part 2 to this, because there's no way we're getting through the coins that you have laid out here. I know, that's what I'm saying.
I tell you, there's a lot of subjects I normally would have no interest in, but people that come on like this make it interesting, and I'm like, holy crap, this is really actually interesting.
I appreciate that. I hope I can make it more interesting, and as we go along, we'll make it more interesting. So we're not going to go through too much time with all these. Now, this is the center hub of Greek life. This is 5th century Athens. This is where all the greatest minds come out of. This is Pericles. This is Themistocles, Thucydides, Sophocles, you name it. I mean, they all came from this period of time. And these were the standard. This is, if you look on the right, it looks like it says AOE, but that's a theta. So it says Athe, which is Athens. They call themselves Athe. And you have, on the left, you have Athena. On the right, you have the mechanical owl that Daedalus built for. And this was the most respected coin and currency of its day because it was very pure metal. It had a very precise 17-gram weight, and no matter where you went with it, this was accepted. This was like the U.S. dollar of its day.
Wow.
And Athens was that
That's
central
badass.
hub of just thought. It's a cool coin, and there are a lot of them out there. That's the thing. It's not hard to get one. It's not hard to get one in that beautiful of condition.
Now, curious, why just real quick, the irregularity of the coin itself. I mean, obviously in modern times we have coins that are round for the more practical purposes. So they can have indentations or grooves,
Sure.
but they're more round. Do they when they have the blanks? Do they even try to make them into from a round thing? Because I think that the intrinsic value would change depending on how much of the material is in there. So these irregularities, how much of an effect did it have on the intrinsic value of the coin?
No, none at all. I mean, the main thing was the weight, right? And that it was stamped in a way that nobody could fake them, which people did fake them. You have all kinds of people back then that would fill them with bronze or copper and coat them with silver.
Oh, that's right. So two different coins would be valued in two different ways, right? Okay. So no two coins would have the same amount of value because it's based on their weight.
Well, the denominations
Sort of.
would. So this is a good time to bring this up. This is called a tetradrachm, which is 4 drams. And the dram was an average person's daily salary. Let's say a soldier especially got paid about a dram a day, and that was enough to get a good amount of things. So this is 4 days of wages right here. And we're going to get to the Judas coin. And so you can keep this in mind. Judas coin, the 30 pieces of silver, was a tetradrachm. So this was a universal 17-gram weight throughout most of the world once Alexander took it and brought it to the rest of the world. So yeah, but these are beautiful. I think I have another example of one because no two are alike. Like you said, they're completely different. They went for aesthetics eventually, but Athens just was producing a shitload of coins, and that's what they did. And they made a beautiful one. And I think this is one of the most beautiful coins ever made.
It is
Even though
beautiful.
it's simple, it's archaic, but they're wonderful. And in hand, I mean, they're big. The relief really sticks out, and there's something about it. And Athens was.
What is the real size of these? I mean, compared to a quarter, what size would this be?
It's about as thick as 4 or 5 quarters, and about a little bit bigger than a quarter.
Wow.
Yeah, they're heavy. I mean, they're heavy. They're
Like a pound.
I wonder if I got one on me. I don't think I brought any.
That is pretty thick, actually.
Yeah, they're a good thickness. They are. They're nice and heavy. They're impressive. When you see them in real life, they are impressive.
And I gotta agree with somebody in the live feed. I always thought the mechanical owl was something just off Clash of the Titans. That was something that was actually attributed to Athena back then.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you know the story of Daedalus and Icarus, Daedalus, what a lot of people don't know outside of Clash of the Titans, and I'm the kind of person that believes in a lot of these mythical figures. I think that the Greeks based a lot of people from the Bronze Age, like to think of the Iliad, think of Homer's, Iliad and Odyssey, Achilles, and Odysseus.
Great stories.
People, yeah, some of my favorites, and I really do believe that they were based in truth, and that there is a decent amount of evidence for it. It's maybe a naivety on my part, but a lot of historians, I think, would agree. So Daedalus, I believe, was a real person that was probably an engineer, somebody that designed toys and buildings, and he is said to have built the labyrinth for King Minos, where the half man, half bull, the Minotaur, was kept. And, we go there today where that was located, and there is a labyrinth under that castle, and it is kind of weird, but things get attributed to people, and then the story is told over years, and many things are added, many things are subtracted, the truth is blown up. But I think that a lot of these things were based on real people, and I think that Daedalus might have made a mechanical owl. He didn't give it to Athena, but it was something that he was remembered for. And that's how they remembered him.
Hermes was my favorite. I always liked Hermes.
Oh, yeah, he's a great one.
you familiar with the show? And it lasted 3 seasons. It's not long, unfortunately, longer, but it's called Da Vinci's Demons.
Da Vinci's Demons?
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing of it, but no, I don't think I've seen it. No, I know I didn't.
They had a mechanical thing very similar to this. If you haven't, it's brilliant. If you really like the Medici and all that kind of Florence type mythos and stories and involved with that, one of the best series I've ever seen was Da Vinci's Demons. But Da Vinci's Demon, or was it Demons? Yeah, but it had a mechanical element very similar to this, and I always thought that was just part of the lore. And by the way, Iliad and the Odyssey, just amazing. I read those in high school, and it's still one of my favorite things I've ever read. And it's big.
Me too.
It's a long time to read.
I mean, it's one of the most, the Iliad is one of the most gruesome, brutal, violent books ever written. And to think that it goes back to 1200 BC, it wasn't written until the 8th century BC by Homer. But by then they had really perfected the story. And I don't think till today anything exists that can match it as far as just the brutality that's in it. And I think that's what I admire about it and his writing. But like you said, we don't want to. We want to get through some of this, so let's move on.
Sure,
if that's okay.
Whenever you're ready to go to the next coin, just tell Dave, and he'll turn it for you.
Gotcha. This is just another example, just to show you. You know, this one has even a little bit more detail, and you know, this is just a second example of the same coin. I did that with a couple of things, not with many, but just so that you can get an idea. There are many of them out there. Go ahead to the next one. All right, so now we're going into about 460 BC, where coinage is starting to get good. And a place that doesn't get enough credit for what it does is Sicily, especially Syracuse, but most of Sicily. They had hired all the best die engravers that were around. And these again were big silver coins. And the engravers eventually started even signing their names on these dies. They were just, as you can see, absolutely beautiful pieces. You have the charioteer there riding on the left with victory or Nike above the horses, crowning the horses. And you have somebody called Arethusa on the right. And this is, if you can see, her whole eye is in the profile. That is called archaic artistry. That changed very quick, which you'll see with the next one. So unless you have questions on this one, go ahead to the next one.
Beautiful.
Again, we're going to be on Sicily for a couple of minutes. This is
these are in your collection, by the way. I mean, are these just photos, or do you have these in your collection?
No. I wish I've owned some of these, but no, these are prime examples of coins that a lot of them are worth a lot of money. But I wanted to, you know, show what the sort of the epitome or the best pieces would be, and that's what I did here. This is just awesome. A kind of strange river god on the right with a man's head and the body of a bull. So
looks
this
like
was a little. Hey, you know, it's a good profile, Steve. I told you. But it's.
I shaved for this. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. So yeah, go on. We're still in Sicily. Like I said, I've given Sicily its due because it doesn't get enough credit. And they had the greatest artists. This is another Sicilian city called Acragas. This is again 5th century BC, mid 5th century BC. You see the sort of a sea eagle on the left, and it's on an Ionic column, or what some people call Corinthian columns. And then a real, you know, that lobster, it just looks so real. And this is 100 years, or maybe 150 or so years after the technology for coinage was already invented. And you're already getting these people that have to carve these images into iron and get this kind of detail. And it's pretty impressive how quickly they really mastered it. And we're going to see the mastering of it really coming up soon.
What's that say on the eagle above and below?
Sure. On the top is the name of the city. It's Akras, which is it's in Greek. And what does it say on the back? It's Antos, Akrasantos, which is the name of the city. But the spelling they still didn't get right. So the top part is left to right. The bottom part is right to left. And so that's just
okay.
Yeah, Akagas. Yeah, it's just the name of
Got
the city. They get better with that soon. You'll see. Yeah, go ahead to the next one. This is just
Wow.
phenomenal. That's a $140,000 coin, but it's a big, thick silver piece.
That's insane.
Yeah, this is like the Greeks again. They inhabited. You have to think of the Mediterranean Sea, and this is something that everybody should know. And this is how civilization really began. Modern civilization is that, as Plato called it, was it maybe Aristotle called it? No, it was Plato. Frogs around a pond, right? The Greeks kind of resided all the way around the Mediterranean and took over and expanded. Their cities would get too full, and they would send out a bunch of people that to new lands. And Sicily was one of them, and northern Italy was another. It's called an apoikia, and they would found a new nation. And most of that happened in the 7th, 6th century BC. And this is a place called Rhegium. I'm not going to go into great detail about Rhegium. It's not that exciting. There are some cool things about it, but this the artistry that they were able to get on that, especially on that lion's head, as you can see, it's from the top. It's masterful. It's a masterpiece.
So they would walk around with these coins like we do with pennies and dimes, and that like this was just an everyday handful of these tigers
Well,
and
these would be
lions.
sorry. Yeah, I mean, but these would have been worth more. So again, this is a tetradrachm, 4 drams. So this is a soldier's 4 days worth of pay, and that's gonna, like I said, come into play when I explain the 30 pieces of silver, which will come soon, and I'll explain to you how I got to the figure of what it would be worth in modern day money. But there's a few things that need to be known, but we're still kind of just going through these. So let's move on through.
Okay.
All right. So now Syracuse is the main city in Sicily, and they started to import the best die engravers of their days. And these guys were just phenomenal. If you could see the image, the face on the right, and just how beautifully that's done, and think that somebody had to carve that into a piece of iron, and it goes very deep into it. The same thing with the side with the chariots. We're really getting to the peak and the pinnacle of the artistry of these coins. And Syracuse was one of the best. And like I said, they don't get enough credit for it. They were a place that experimented with democracy more than anybody else did, that had people that today we would politically feel very connected to, more so than even Athens did. You know, you had Athens, it was a democracy, invented democracy. You had Sparta, which was an oligarchy. It was the absolute enemy of democracy. And then you had Syracuse, which was its own island experiment. And it's tried it very many ways. And a lot of great things and great minds, like art, came out of there.
Sweet.
We can go to the next one. Yeah, this is
Oh,
another
wow.
masterpiece.
Medusa.
So they started experimenting. Well, there are Medusas, and I think they're coming up. But this is again the city goddess, and you could see the face really sticks out of there. It's done so well, and this is a point where the artists started to sign the dies. That only happened for a short period of time, a couple of decades, where the artist hid his name in the hair strands, in the hairband, in the necklace, in all kinds of little places. And when we find coins with that detail in it, and we know the artists, Eunymius, Kimon, people like that, we know their names because they signed their dies, and they were the masters of their day and the absolute best. And this is a masterpiece. And this is again.
They're also getting more round. It seems like they're finally kind of.
Were these poured?
Correct.
These are poured, right? Were these poured?
No,
because these are, like you said, they're so round. Or these are struck as well?
Wow.
Yeah, these were struck. I mean, the dies, they were made blank first, heated, and then struck by hand. Or like I said, I think that they were pressed. But
still
either
amazing.
way, yeah, I mean, to think that they came up with this technology. We still cannot reproduce unless we use a hydraulic press. I mean, that's what's really mind-blowing about it.
Ancient aliens.
Not saying aliens,
Aliens.
but it's aliens.
No. Oh man, no, I don't think so. I think I think we just got it all wrong, and it's just like in certain sciences where we're kind of stubborn before that paradigm shift occurs. And maybe I'll be the one to prove it. Yeah. So yeah, again, the pinnacle. We're getting through this. This is another absolutely beautiful piece where they're experimenting with the front of the face. Again, the charioteer. It's a common Sicilian Syracusan motif. The name of the engraver, I wish you could see my finger pointing to it, but it's on the cup of the head. You can see 4 letters.
It says like Navigo.
It's a lambda, but yeah, it's a lambda.
I see it, but I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, but that's part of the same. The other half is on the other side of the head. But they came up, like I said, with creative ways to hide their names on there. But again, this is a piece that you would pay 100.
Oh, I see it. It says, "Where's the curve?"
You got it. Where's
nobody
the
get that?
I see what you did
Really?
there. I see what you did there.
2 people get it. Okay.
Sorry, I'm following along. And it just hit me late, Steve. That was good.
I didn't get it. The curve.
It's a flat Earth.
Oh,
reference.
gotcha. Okay, I got it then. I watch
Where's
those
the
films.
curve?
I watch those films. Right.
So somebody does at least.
Do you have any sphere coins?
Yes. Yeah. No, I have coins with globes on them, though. I mean, the Romans depicted many times the gods, holding a globe. There's a very certain way that they depicted it. And
Debate over.
Done.
Game over, man.
No conspiracy.
The Romans called it. The Romans called it.
Yeah. The Greeks before them. I mean, Eratosthenes said that we are a heliocentric, model, but unfortunately, that didn't gain any traction. Sorry, I'm gonna take a.
And he can put money on that. Oh. So next is the one that is the one that I like the most out of looking through these ahead of time. The one that you're going to next is probably one of my favorites, I think. Yes.
So now we're getting to gold. And I chose this one just to throw things off a little bit. We're out of Sicily. We're out of Syracuse. We're out of the sort of, pinnacle and the peak of all the coins. And this is a coin from a place in the Bosphorus by the Black Sea called Pantikapaon. So their name is based off of Pan. And you can see on the back, it's got a pi, alpha, nu, and it says Pan. And obviously their god that they worshipped was Pan, and he's on the front of the coin, and you got the griffin on the other side. And this is struck in gold, so pure gold. This would have been worth a lot back then.
Wow.
Not as much as gold is worth today, because there was sort of more of it. Silver was rarer, gold was more common. And this is, an absolute beautiful piece. I just you got to understand, there are tens of thousands of different coins, and I had to pick a few examples to go through.
You did good.
And so I just...
That's a griffin?
It's a griffin, yeah.
I thought it was a drunk llama with a party favor on its head.
You know what? We might have to do some more research into it, because that could be the case.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Believe it or not, I've seen that before, and that looks exactly what I remember.
Antelope. That's an antelope.
No, it's a party favor. A party favor.
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's got what is a griffin? The head of
head of a eagle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the head of an eagle, the body of a.
It's got the wings of an eagle. It's got the lower part, the back hind legs of a lion, maybe the forepart of a lion too, and then a head of a deer, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. Gosh, somebody's gonna get really mad at me that I didn't remember that.
We're Egyptologists when we need it.
Yeah, they'll be okay.
The griffins that they depicted were.
I have to look this up.
Were different. By the way,
it's a drunk llama.
That's what I was flashing.
The drunk llama.
That's what I was flashing earlier. I have ancient Egyptian artifacts, and this is a really cool one. This is real.
Oh, badass.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
That actually belongs to my brother. And I used to, because in ancient coins you also, and I do coin shows once in a while, and I deal in antiquities, so you come across them, and Egyptian stuff. There is so much of it out there that you could distribute it amongst the people. I know, that Egyptologist that you had on, she was lovely. I mean, that was I commented after that show. That's when I said, I do ancient coins. If you're ever interested, I said how much I enjoyed her, and this is something that we should get into eventually. But I think that there is a difference between how coins are handled and Egyptian artifacts and certain artifacts, because there is just so much of it out there. She was like, you can't touch it, and people want to own it, and that's horrible. That's where the coin people differ from the rest of the archaeologists, is because the amount.
I have a question for you, Rick. I have a question for you, since you kind of dive into Egyptology. What's your theory on the Sphinx?
I heard what yours is, and I heard what yours is, but I really
Water erosion.
think that there is a lot of erosion, but I mean the thing is the stone, depending on what layer of it you look at, is of different consistency. Not all sandstone is created equal, and you can see that. So you would expect the erosion to be there. And Egypt has incredible sandstorms, especially around Giza. And I don't see anything that would connect the Sphinx to anything earlier. The Sphinx was from that time period. Is it Khufu or Sefu that they said that?
Khufu and Khafre.
Built it. Okay, Khafre. Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah, well, it was one of them. But I think that it's correct that it was one of them. But I really liked what was her name, Dr.
Bryson.
That you had on. Bryson, right? I really like
awesome.
what she said about it. But why do you think that it's older?
Because there in the limestone there are grooves that can only be made by precipitation, heavy precipitation, and they were repairing the Sphinx back in Khafre's dynasty. So why, if they made it, were they repairing it? Because there's two different. There's the bedrock and then the repair blocks that are kind of wedged into places where it's eroded. Why are they repairing it?
Are they from the time of Khafre, those repairs?
Mm-hmm. Well, so they say.
Greeks repaired it. I know that the Greeks added onto it, that they fixed it up. I know that the Romans did, because even the Greeks were really impressed with, the pyramids. And I mean, just read Herodotus and what he says about all these buildings, and they wanted to preserve them, just like we do in modern days. Same thing with the pyramids, and the Sphinx was a big deal. You see the entire back of the Sphinx and the tail and all that, and you see like suddenly there's brick layers. Those were added later, but that wasn't done during that time of Khufu or Khafre or the pyramids of Giza people.
That's what they say.
That was done by the Romans.
That's what they say.
I like your theory. That's what you say, Kyle.
Kyle's theory.
I like.
Don't fall for it, Rick. Don't fall for it. That thing is carved out of solid limestone bedrock in a plateau. You tell me how they did that.
Yes.
Moving on, though.
I mean, very
before I start preaching,
mastery of those tools. Mastery of the tools. Very good.
We need to get back
very
to the
good. I mean,
point.
We'll get into this later. We'll get into this later.
All right, I needed something X-rated next, so I brought this
get
up.
some dirty coins.
Oh wow!
At least one dirty one. Yeah. This is a satyr about to have sex with a nymph, and it literally had color in it, and I thought, why not add one of these things in? And these are from northern Greece, the Macedonia.
Are you sure that's color?
Where Alexander was.
If you want, please divert your eyes at this point in the stream.
What's that?
He said, if you're under 21, please divert your eyes.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to be demonetized. Yeah. I can't see this. My eyes.
We're not even monetized.
Yeah, I know. We're not. That's the funniest part.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that one's like 520 BC. That's a really old one.
Why the before you move on to the next one, Dave? Why are the markings? This one on the left side is very intricate and kind of hot,
Right.
actually. Why is the
Right
one on the
side down.
right just like? Is that sexual frustration that they're?
It's it could be. It's a sort of a swastika pattern if you would see the whole thing, and that
That took a
is
dark turn.
because they thought that the coin needed to be punched, like it was an incuse to get the front of the coin to come out. Later, they learned that that wasn't the deal, but for about 100 years, they had kind of thought that that was the case.
How do you know
And
that's
so
a
this
nymph?
is an early type coin. Because the nymph's hooked up with the satyrs, and she looks like she's complicit. So I
Hooked
would
up?
guess, but they didn't.
Oh, she's
necessarily
complicit,
have
all
to
right.
be. Yeah.
One more
but
question:
I just thought
is that a fish diving in between them?
Are
I
you
don't know
being
how they had
serious?
sex back then, but I don't remember that particular position. But it's okay. I don't remember a lot of things about sex.
Fishy style.
Yeah, fish style. That's good.
Okay,
Good. Yeah.
now we can go on.
I went through like 100 of these to find one that you could actually see, his wang. So,
Thank you for
so
that.
now we're getting to a
That
whole new. You're very welcome. I thought about you. So now we're getting to a whole nother era, and so really quick, a quick story. Greeks invented the coins. They started to popularize them, and there was they kind of fought each other throughout the 5th century, the 4th century BC, and then late in the 4th century BC, a man named Philip II, Philip of Macedon, said, "Enough with the fighting. I'm going to unite all the Greek cities." You can imagine it like being America divided not only by states but by counties and maybe even cities, because there was about 1,000 non-unified, sometimes weak alliances. This is after the Peloponnesian War, where both Sparta and Athens were the superpower, and they both lost that supremacy. Now people are fighting for the supremacy, and a man named Philip of Macedon, who was by the Greeks seen as somebody that was a tyrant. He was a king. A king was primitive, right? They were northerners. They were very primitive. They were. But he forced all of Greece to capitulate to him and to get along. He placed his garrisons there. He made his armies there. And he had a son. He had a son that was something really special in history, something that you get once in maybe a millennium. And you're looking at a picture of that son wearing the horns of Ammon, which is the Egyptian god, the ram god, because he was said to have fathered this man. And this is Alexander the Great. That is a picture of Alexander the Great wearing the.
You warned me not to get you started on Alexander the Great.
I can go on about Alexander the Great forever, but why? Yeah. Tell me what you got about it. Is there any weird stories that I need to know?
Oh no! You told me in your email not to even get you started on Alexander the Great.
I remember that. Yeah, because I can talk about him forever. I mean, he was just. Everybody knows
he was
him.
Great.
He's the most famous. He was great. He's the most famous person outside of religious figures in the world, and there's a reason for that. He ruled from 336 to 323 BC. It was a short time. He died at the age of 33. But what he accomplished in those few years was he took most of the world by storm. He brought down the great superpower of the time, which is Persia, which was seen as immortal. He spread Greek thought. Don't forget, his personal tutor was Aristotle. And Aristotle instilled certain things in him. His mother, Olympias, Alexander's mother, has instilled these religious things in him. He saw himself as a modern day Achilles in his day. And
he was gay too, correct?
He was, yeah. Him and his lover Hephaestion were very close. I mean, it wasn't long after Hephaestion died that Alexander passed away too. And Yeah, he did. I can do a whole show about Alexander and the fascinating things that he's done, but he's a worthy person. This coin was struck under right after he died under one of his generals called Lysimachus. And that's why you see Athena holding Nike and the name Lysimachus on the left. But he spread coinage throughout the world. He's the one that made it. He took it to Judea. He took it to Egypt, to parts of the world that nobody had the concept of money, and suddenly everybody is trading, everybody's using money instead of bartering. And he paved the way for so many things, including Christianity. If you want to get into that, one can argue that, but he opened up the world. He was very much about being, we talk about like diversity and things like that these days. He was very much a person into diversity. And his people hated him for it. And that's why they say he was possibly poisoned. But he wanted the Macedonians, which were his people, to breed with the Afghanis, the Indians, all those people, and make one human race. That was part of his master plan. But he didn't live to see all that happen. He left the kingdom to some pretty incompetent and competent people that would fight with each other. You can go to the next one. All right, there's 3 examples of this coin. I just wanted to give you here an idea of like how different the artistry can look. This is again Alexander the Great wearing a elephant head as a helmet, you can say. If you look at it closely,
that's already makes a statement.
Yeah, they did all kinds of different helmets. When he went to different places, India, for example, they this is how he was depicted. When he was in Egypt, it was the ram's horns. So different places, different things. And I put, I think, 3 examples of this coin so you can see the artistry. Look how beautiful on the reverse. You can see just Athena holding up her spear and her shield. I mean, just the lines in it. This is just, whoever engraved the die for this was absolutely amazing.
Wearing an elephant helmet would definitely make it hard to forget.
You'll see more renditions of it, and you'll see how different coinage of the same dates were, depending on because he took mints that traveled with him. He took historians with him. He took, he knew what he was doing was special, and even though he killed his main historian, but that's a time for another story.
He didn't like what the historian was writing, or did he want to revise the history or something, or they had a lover's quarrel or some kind?
He just became more and more tyrannical as time went on. I mean, he was marrying, women from different, ethnicities and tribes, and his Macedonians generals were getting pissed at him. His main historian, Callisthenes, was just absolutely enraged with how he was acting. And like any leader, king, dictator, they develop paranoia. And Alexander was no different, thinking that he was going to be killed, that everybody was out to get him, nobody was on his side. So he just became more and more tyrannical. Yeah, I mean, just like Henry VIII. I don't think he went quite as far, but he would have eventually.
He went crazy.
I mean, do you think that he might have like a STD of some kind, that kind of like syphilis could kind of like make people go mental, and if he had been that with so many wives and partners, could have been some kind of mental thing that he had?
I mean, if that was the case, then you would have to attribute that to every leader that has had the power that he had.
Probably that does happen though with every leader.
Steve, how dare you slut shame? How dare you slut shame Alexander the Great?
That's blasphemy right there. That is blasphemy.
How dare
he was
you, sir?
not really into. He didn't care that much about sex. That's something that is consistently written about. Is that he only cared about his soldiers, and he only cared about conquering new lands. Sex was something in the back of his mind.
I'm gonna take it that his history guy probably went back and fudged that.
Well, we don't have any direct writings of the first historians. We only have, because he had a few historians, and another one, his general Ptolemy. If you ever seen the movie Agora, He's the person that opens up talking, I was Alexander. Or no, sorry, movie Alexander, not Agora. Ptolemy talks in the beginning. Ptolemy is the Ptolemaic model that we go on. I mean, if you think Ptolemy was smart, Alexander, tutored by Aristotle, so was Ptolemy, was that much smarter. But they wrote down the histories too, but we lost those originals. There was a lot written about them, but we have only people from 100 to 200 years later using the originals to write more concise, precise histories. Again, getting into what happened to his historians would take time.
Sure.
But there were some
And
pretty messed up stories.
I would like to have that talk at some point. I think that's interesting.
Oh, we could do a whole thing on Alexander. And this is the first time I've ever been on a live stream or podcast or anything like that. So I think I'll get a better idea of how to make it more interesting even next time.
We don't yeah.
Yeah, we just need to get
Kyle,
you right on the Sphinx, and then you're gonna be good to go.
Yeah, get right on
Listen,
that.
I will change your mind about the Sphinx. That's for sure. The thing is, it's getting back to the
Rick, I am as
artistry
hard-headed
of
as they come. Ask Steve.
Kyle, I believe in you, man. I fucking believe in you, man.
You can do it, man. You can do it.
You can. It's called reason and logic, Kyle. I know you have it.
I'm appalled at the just willingness to believe what the mainstream media will tell you. I'm just kidding.
Right.
Go ahead, Dave, to the next.
NASA pays him well to shill out information, by the way.
Infowars.com.
Yeah, Alex Jones. Recording.
Kidding.
Oh, God.
Kidding.
Don't get me started on that. This is another one, just a gold version of that coin that you saw. Beautiful rendition of Alexander the Great. We know what these people looked like. This was 2,300 years ago, over 2,300 years ago, and we have depictions of them that were masterfully done. He's wearing that elephant mask again. And this is just it's in gold, but it's got a ship's prow on the other side of it. And that's
it's kind of a funny looking ship, to be honest with you.
It's just it
looks like a shoe.
It would be a funky looking shoe, but yeah, it kind of does, right?
Shoe.
Have you seen Dutch people in their wooden shoes?
Yeah, maybe like a clodhopper. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's
a clodhopper.
Is that what they're called?
Steve, you're a beer guy. I'm drinking Tecate with what is that stuff called? Clamato juice. Have you ever had that before?
Oh, tomato. No, I'm not a big fan of things with tomato. I like oyster tomato stuff. The only time I have like a Bloody Mary, maybe, but Clamato. Yeah, Clamato is clam juice and tomato juice. I'm not a fan of it.
Right.
I'm just drinking coffee. Just straight coffee today.
This is the beer version of. This is a beer version of Bloody Mary. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I'm just drunk on all of this. I'm just drunk on all of this history and knowledge. I don't know about you guys, but I'm just drunk on all.
Well, I watched the show, so I see Steve pulls out his drink once in a while. I was like, all right, maybe I'll have one.
He has a problem.
Yeah,
he has a problem.
I talked about him. He says that's not a ship. That's a space station. Aliens, not sailing aliens. Aliens. There's no stars.
I've had people tell me that.
That could be the tool that they used to carve the Sphinx 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, that could be the tool used for that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. It looks like it's fire on the bottom, not waves from the sea. And
that's a rocket, baby. That's a rocket.
You heard it here first, guys. You heard it here first.
I love you guys, man. You're great. That's really good.
Okay, David.
And that's why I watch your show. All right, go on to the next one.
Anybody else watches it, but at least we know why
Yeah. At least one or two is good.
Exactly.
This is another Alexander. So I just put a few. So just you can see the difference in the engravers. Like everybody had their own vision of what this coin should look like. So I didn't want to spend too much time on this one. We can go on to the next. And again, here's one more rendition of the same coin.
And he likes that elephant beanie, doesn't he?
Well, there was there's one way more common where he's wearing a lion's helmet, and I mean that's a pretty common coin. Again, these were big pieces.
Jesus, and, Alexander.
His coins were everywhere. As a matter of fact, the Quran says that Alexander had horns. Right? There's a legend that said that if that he had to hide the horns in the back of his head. But I think that I know where the legend comes from, because a lot of those coins were with Alex and the horns of Ammon, or Zeus Ammon, were circulated in Arabia. And it says his name clearly on the coin, and so I think they connected those two things, and that's where the information from the Quran came.
I just had a really dirty thought if he had horns.
What's that? A really dirty thought.
I shouldn't have even said anything. I just had a really dirty picture in my mind if he actually did have horns.
Well, those are tusks,
Great.
right?
Great
They're
handlebars.
tusks, not horns, right?
Well, no, these are tusks, but
These are tusks,
the
okay.
horns, if you remember, I had one before that kind of went in a circular pattern, or
Yeah, it's been a demon. I mean, that's possible, right?
Could be.
Next. Sorry. One more. This is again Alexander the Great. I think we're done with that. All right, real quick. You can go past this one.
Go back.
This is the kings of Alexander that he left behind. I just want to give you a quick idea. They started making coins in shape of shields. So that top of that, the front of that coin is kind of semicircle. You know, it's like a cone. And that's what a Macedonian shield would look like. And that is Perseus on there. And Athena on the back.
It's kind of convex
similar
a little bit.
Convex, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Convex. Yes, and that's 3rd century BC. And that was a coin of Antigonus Gonatas, one of the sons of the generals and the kings that Alexander left behind when he divided his kingdom after he died. All right, let's get to the next one. I think we're almost done with this folder, and then the next one is really short. That's just a masterpiece of engraving right there. I just wanted to show you that. That is one of the. It's a beautiful, beautiful rendition of one of the again kings of that Alexander left behind.
How close did these actually look? To these look to like how they actually did? How close are these like things?
Sure, they based the portraits off of statues, right? So they would get a statue, and if the statue was really good and the die engraver of the coin was really good, he could spend enough time to get it to look like this. I'm showing you guys really prime examples of what these coins represent. They don't all look this good, and there are, ones that are very worn down. The artistry is not as good on all of them. This is just really a well executed portrait. And I don't think we can do this stuff today. At least there's nobody that exists. It's kind of like people that work in marble. It doesn't happen anymore. So you can't get anybody that can really engrave a masterpiece.
It's a lost art.
Marble. It's a lost art.
Kind of like building the pyramids.
Yeah, kind of. Except we kind of know how they did it. Kyle?
I didn't hear anything. Next coin.
This is
Windows logo.
Going back sometime.
It's Windows logo.
Now tell me that there weren't ancient civilizations that knew technology.
There you go. Yeah.
Point Kyle.
Dude, that's impressive, Kyle. That's impressive. Steve said
now
that, right?
all we need it to do is crash when they go to pay for something.
Right.
Yeah. Aliens confirmed.
This is done. Yeah, aliens confirmed for sure. I mean, that's not a lion bringing down a deer. That is a Bigfoot bringing down a lion or a deer or a chupacabra, I think. But no, that is a lion.
That's that goddamn
It's a
drunk llama again. That's what it is.
What is it?
It's that drunk llama.
Drunk
again.
llama. That drunk llama gets around, real party animal.
I'm telling you, man. Yeah, just a common motif. Yeah, these are old. This is like 520, I think, BC from Macedonia. Going to the next. I think the last ones I just threw in a few. One more thing. This is Thebes. This is they named their town after the Egyptian Thebes, and they put shields on their coins. These were Greek shields. They were held with they put a spear right through one of those holes that you see there, and they marched forward. They were a great army. I'm not going to get into the story I thought I was going to about there's another same coin coming up after this one with a shield on it, and the name of a man named Epaminondas. Epaminondas is something that anybody that loves history should look into who he is and how different the world would have been if he wasn't killed at the Second Battle of Mantinea. Epaminondas was go to the next one and I'll show you his name is on it. Right before Alexander and Philip, actually, right before Philip went into power, this man whose name is on the back of the coins, it just says Epa, Epsilon, Pi, Alpha, but his full name is Epaminondas. He was, just if you were to read about him and what we know of him, you would be like, man, if this guy took over the world, and if he didn't die, he would have. We would be living in a completely different world today, and it would have been a completely different world back then, where his objective was to spread democracy and liberty, really. And they really held things like free speech, dear. It was Philip and Alexander that thwarted all those things, and were way more monarchical, way more tyrannical. But he was one of the greatest soldiers, one of the greatest leaders that ever lived. He didn't die. We live in a completely different world today. He's one of those people that could have changed history. You read about him, you'll see what I mean. But I'm not gonna go too deep into it.
It never works out that way. Assholes live forever.
But this is not. I mean, it's not a very interesting coin per se as far as the striking, but it does show. I mean, the Greek shield. They would have it set up so each person would have a shield. You have a sphere, and they would walk in what's called a phalanx, right? And that would be and then they eventually came in like rectangular shields, didn't they? And this was a defense mechanism. They would actually. The Romans had that, right? But didn't the Greeks have a phalanx too?
The Greeks invented the
same principle.
And
yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
It is, but the round shield thing didn't always have those little indents in between. That was a Theban thing. That was a Boeotian thing, which is the region called Boeotia. And they had a 3-foot diameter shield that they had held. Half of it would cover you. The other half would cover the guy to your my left or to your left. And they would lock in that way. And it was a spear at the top of your hand, and you would march forward in unison, and that's what the phalanx was. And it was all about beating with the enemy and pressure coming together, and one side pushing another. It's kind of the opposite of tug of war, and trying to knock the other side down, and then when they're on the ground, spearing them wherever you can. It was a really brutal, ugly way going to war.
I would not be a good Spartan or a good gladiator.
Nobody would. The Spartans, what they had to endure in their lifetimes was absolutely incredible. It was amazing. Spartans were were a social experiment that will never be replicated and never be duplicated. You want to talk about
the helmet would mess up my hair, I think.
Yeah,
you would die looking fabulous. That's great.
Yeah, definitely.
He's young, but damn, he looked good.
It's actually not a bad way to go.
Oh, they call
okay,
it,
now here's the question.
Yeah, go for it.
Here's the question that I had for you, Rick. How do we go from beautiful, intrinsic people on a coin to them just saying, you know what, we should put wheat on the coin? Wheat is definitely the way to go.
This is an earlier piece, so I should have put this at the beginning, but I saw it in the last minute before I sent the folder, and I said I should include this one because this is southern Italy. It's Metapontian. This is like 560 BC. It's some of the earliest stuff, and the earliest stuff you can tell because it's got the one side is in relief and the other side is in incuse, and so this one is just it's a simple basic piece that's when you see it in real life, it's pretty impressive. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking like, what the hell? Why did I put it in here? I think that's the last one on
the work around it is beautiful though, like the edge.
No, absolutely. When you see them in your hand, that coin is way more impressive. But this city, if you see, it says Meta, and it was Metapontion. So it's a city in southern Italy that obviously prided itself in its making wheat, and that's what it used as coins. And that's what cities did. They put what they prided themselves in because completely changes once you get to the Romans, where the emperor starts to be the main motif. And I think that's the
Excellent.
is it the last one?
I think so. Rick,
Thought that was the last
real
one.
quick, let me stop you right there. So that, how long do you think it would take you to tell the Judas? Here's what I want to do. I want to try to get the Judas story in, and then we're gonna kind of have to cut off at 20 till so that we can transition over to the next show. Believe it or not, we've almost gone our 2 hours, but the coins that we didn't get to, we want to bring you back either next week or whenever you're free next and finish off the coins when we're not kind of pressed for that time, because I do want to get through them all. But you tell me if you think you can get through that, or you want to hold that off and kind of just go over a couple more. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem that the way that I see it is I put the things that were not that interesting with story as far as stories go at the beginning, and then it starts to get interesting after this. But I can do the Judas thing just to give you an idea of, because I think it's in the biblical folder and it's one of the first things. The main story that I was going to tell was the Jewish war against the Romans. That was going to be the climax. But yeah, we have limited time. I can give you just a breakdown of how I got to the numbers of what those pieces are worth. We can at least give the people something that.
I'll tell you, if that was the boring stuff, I mean, Steve and I pretty much asked questions throughout that whole entire thing. So if it's getting more fascinating, then that means that we're probably gonna have to schedule a 5-hour or 6-hour stream.
I'm thinking too, because I mean, people do have some questions that I'd really like to kind of get to.
Okay, let's do that.
We might having part 2.
Yeah, let's do that then.
I'd be happy to do that.
Let's
go
ahead, Steve.
Well, one of the questions I was asked by my friend Trevor, he asked, and I don't know anything about this, so please elucidate us on this because way out of my pay grade. But he says, and I'm going to read it as verbatim, so hopefully you understand it. He says, he wants to know your thoughts on looting in the Mir Zakah in 1992 or 93 of the 4 tons of gold and gold, silver objects sold into private collections, including the gold coin of Alexander, or the gold Alexander coin.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Look, it's not fresh in my head, but the thing is, I don't like looting. Nobody likes looting.
Agreed.
When there is an archaeological site and it's broken into and it has already been discovered, that does ruin things. The only thing that I would try to sort of get into people's minds is that even with gold coins, there are so many. When you find a hoard of coins, you don't find a little jar with 10 or 15. You're finding 10,000 stuck together, and they're all over the place. A lot of stuff came out of Bulgaria. You find soldiers that before they went into battle would bury their coins. People before a siege would bury their goods and their coins. Coins were something that there are huge amounts. I mean, a single gold coin of Alexander, not even a museum would care about it unless it's unique, unless it's the only one. But otherwise, there are hundreds, there are thousands of them. And museums don't even want them anymore. It's good for dating. It's good for, we know what the place is, or what the time period is when we're digging because we find coins. But there are plenty to go around. And that's the important thing to remember, is that there are so many of them that if museums kept them all, they would have basements full and not know what to do with. I understand where they're coming from, but I think that with ancient coins, it's different. There are so many, and they can be distributed, and there can be collectors. And like I said, you can do it at any price range. You can buy an ancient coin for $10, $15, and they go up from there.
So somebody else wanted to know if you were familiar with like Chinese coinage during the time, or some other area other than the Mesopotamian region.
The Chinese struck these. I think I have a couple here that I just got a bag full of old stuff. Yeah, I don't deal too much with Chinese coins. They struck these sort of square. They didn't strike them. Sorry, they cast them. And I thought I had some on me here, but I don't. They casted a coin. It's not an area that I deal with very much. They just had some writing on it, the value of it. They had holes in them so that they can be put on a chain, and they were worth their weight in bronze.
When did paper money come around?
Paper money? Not that long ago.
Probably not until like even like the 17th, 18th century, maybe. I mean,
something like that.
I have an artifact myself.
yeah.
I brought an artifact to show off myself. It's not a coin, but I was actually cleaning out some things from my grandfather, and I came across this box, and it was heavy, and I opened it up, and this is going to be ironic that I'm going to show you this, but I still think it's cool. This is from 1822. It's a handcrafted wooden, it's wooden made Bible that has been in my family for I don't know how long, but you can open like the some of the pages have torn out and they've put them in hold on one second, paper. But the earliest birth date is like 1822 on here. Kind of show you this.
Okay, I'm seeing it now. My image was covering your image, and I just noticed that this whole time I didn't see it. Oh, that's really cool. You said 18th century, so 1700s?
It's 1822 is.
Oh, 1822, 19th century. So when you say wooden, you mean the covers are wooden or the?
Yeah, it's actually the Bible, and it's falling apart, but
I see it now.
the outside is wood. The outside is wood, wow. And they've made it to where you can tie in pieces of the Bible because apparently what happened, there's a regular New Testament, and then there's what they called the updated New Testament that came out in 1881, the revised version. And what they did was just sew in the revised version for where the old one was. But,
I see. Right. That's really neat. Yeah. Did you ever have it looked at by a professional?
The creepiest thing is that there's a flower in here from I don't know when,
beautiful.
But a dead flower, very dead flower.
It's very dead.
It's wonderful.
But
they're saying the paper money was around the 5th century, by the way. What's that?
That's interesting. I mean, because that would be Byzantine era. I mean, I'm pretty okay right around that time. 5th century AD is where my kind of time.
Yeah, it was about that time, and then into China, I guess, developed the paper money according to what they were telling me. So interesting. I had no idea.
Right. Yeah, no, I didn't either. It's something that I definitely have never really delved into. I should know.
And somebody had asked Kyle, how do we not know that's not the Necronomicon that you have?
You don't.
There you go.
Right.
You don't.
Damn, that's a good answer, Kyle.
Something that bezoozled.
Sorry.
I think
I will say though, it does contain the secrets of the Sphinx, and that's how I can speak on that with authority.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. That's good. That's good. I would love to have a show. You're going to have her back, but I would love to have a show, and if I could just break down the history to you of what we know. I'm really good with Bronze Age and Copper Age and all that.
I've seen it all, Rick.
That. If you've seen it all, have you read it all? Read 1177 BC by Eric Klein. Look for that book.
I don't read.
1177.
I don't read.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Could have fooled me. Sphinx.
Right. Yeah.
We avoid things at all costs.
I'm not a conspiracy theory person. However, there are too many. There are too many. I would love to talk to Maggie Bryson about this, but I know that I can't because I know that any any Egyptologist that would like to continue to be an Egyptologist and actually practice can't come on camera and talk about wild ancient civilizations that existed. So it's very hard for me to keep that inside when I have so many questions for her. But that just shows you the respect that I have for her position.
She's
to
awesome.
put her in that.
Oh no, absolutely. And like she said, they're very big on the truth, on what they know for sure, and that is really important. So I mean, there could be all kinds of if you look at like things like Göbekli Tepe, you look at places like Çatalhöyük in Turkey, these really old monolithic structures that they built. That was 12,000 years ago. So there were amazing things.
Ganam Padang.
Yeah, absolutely. All those
Angkor Wat.
All the prehistoric sites are amazing, but you have to take all those things into consideration, know what was going on at the time around the world, and it's an amalgamation of all those things that give us the knowledge that we know. And that's why I say with the Sphinx, there aren't any previous representations of the Sphinx, in the way that it is on the Sphinx in Egypt. And Sphinxes came in many different forms, things like that. The Greeks had their own form of it. You remember Oedipus solved the riddle of the Sphinx. It was a different looking Sphinx. But
my God, Rick, they've got their claws deep in you, don't they?
They pay me in ancient shekels, man.
A couple of questions we get to. I know we got to wrap it up.
We were about to.
But
these
are going to be quick questions.
Go ahead.
1 second. So one person wants to know if you could just real quick, what if you had one coin you could pick, which one would it be? If you had it out of your collection?
Man,
one
that I could get that exists.
Yeah.
My God, that's a really tough question. But let's see, it's called a Inos of Macedon. It's not even the most expensive coin, but it's about a $10,000 one in mint condition, and it's I use it on YouTube as my on YouTube as my avatar. So just a AINOS.
Okay.
Look up. Go ahead. Keep going.
And I gotta ask this one because this is from one of my friends too, and I mean I know it'd probably be a long answer, but it'd be a good item to summarize. But he wants to know if you think Alexander's empire would have collapsed in time anyways due to communication problems that they had, and that Genghis Khan had greater empire because they had better communications in the empire.
Yeah, that would take some time to cover. But as far as Alexander's
that's my kind of thing. I didn't want. Yeah, I didn't want to get involved in a huge question, but maybe very superficial
really
answer.
Quick.
We could talk about more.
People don't appreciate just how amazing the garrisons that Alexander set up. He had to outdo the Persians at the time, who were already good at it. And he had to be better than them. He set up, things like coin mints. He brought traveling cities around with him to establish things like, education for everybody, for the entire world. The communication lines were really well open. The mistake was that he thought that he could leave his empire in competent hands. And that's the thing. He was one great warrior. He was one okay leader, one okay general, but a great warrior that had a vision. And his vision wasn't shared by everybody. And that's why it didn't last. That's why the Romans could take over eventually. But that was... Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. That's a really good question.
Yeah, and we could probably talk about that more next time. And obviously, I think we could probably dive into how long it's going to take to get it to. But the whole Judas thing, I think that's a whole separate show in a way, is it not?
I didn't realize. I thought I had tops 2 hours of material here. We just got through the Greek stuff. I mean, that was supposed to be. I thought
you don't know Stephen Kyle, Rick. You don't know Stephen Kyle.
Yeah. But this is kind of good though, because actually this gives us more reason to bring you back. You seem to be very popular among the masses right now, so that's good.
I love the masses. You guys really
love the masses.
Good audience too. I love your masses. I mean, it's such a good audience too. I'm not just saying that. I stay after.
I do have a good mass, if you ask me.
No, mass, not mass. No, I agree with you. We have the best audience. We couldn't ask for a more supportive audience, people that enjoy listening to this, and such a vast degree of differences, and people still like to watch each episode, no matter what the episode is, whether it's something entertaining or if it's entertaining and informative, or it's a shit show. It doesn't matter as long as they're being entertained, and they love this. So this is great. I'm actually entertained. So I want to dive into this more. We do this for you.
Well, Rick, I want to thank you very much for coming on and doing this. If you are free next week and you want to come back on, we can do that. I would love to have you back as soon as you can. So I tell you what, look at your schedule and send me a day. We're pretty much wide open except for Monday and Tuesday. So any day after Monday and Tuesday, on is yours. You just email it to me and we'll make it happen.
I'm honored. I would be honored to do it. That's a huge compliment. And I promise the next one will be more interesting. We just barely scratched the surface. The good stuff.
This one was too interesting. That's why we only scratched the surface.
That's why I'm like, it's going to be more interesting. That's a high standard. So that's a high bar.
Stop overachieving.
It gets way better. It's way
Make
better.
it awful.
When I get to the biblical stuff and the Jesus stuff, it gets really good.
Let me tell you this too, Rick. This is so fascinating that even Albert Fish himself would stop taking a bite of those two little kids to watch. Now that's high praise.
Grace Bud,
and on that note,
I forget what.
This was so interesting. Even the flat earthers are paying attention.
Wow.
Yeah, they're not even complaining about anything. They're just like,
wow, as a globe on ancient coins up to 2,400 years ago.
Now you're gonna piss them off.
You know, I have
you had them.
And evidence.
You had them, and you just let them go.
But I love you guys.
All right,
I
Rick.
love you, Flat Earth.
All
right, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We'll see you hopefully next week. And guys, we'll see you. We're going to take a quick time to reset, and then we'll be back again to go for another round. So get comfortable. Don't leave that remote. I've always wanted to say that. Always.
Stay there.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Back messages.
Bye.